Hi, folks. I'm back and discussing another movie. Now, today I'm taking a big jump to the left. The previous 2 weeks were discussing dramas, but this is something completely different. We'll be discussing a science fiction movie, one of the great classics, Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. Now, this movie was made in 1979, and of course, in those days, CGI didn't exist. So, this movie is a real testament to creative filmmaking. Of course, I mean, I'm not a big fan of science fiction movies, but there have been a lot of seminal sci-fi movies over the years that I've enjoyed. Soylent Green, I remember, Planet of the Apes, and of course Stanley Kubrick's wonderful 2001: A Space Odyssey. Now, this Alien, in its own right, is definitely a seminal science fiction film that inspired a host of similar films, but never quite outdid the original. Now, the origin of this film comes from a guy called Dan O'Bannon, who was a scriptwriter, and he worked on a little-known science fiction movie in 1974 called Dark Star, directed by John Carpenter. And of course, John Carpenter went on to direct Halloween and the brilliant The Thing in 1982. And Dark Star doesn't quite come off. It was the first feature of John Carpenter, but it did have moments in it that you could see Carpenter and even Dan O'Brien, Bannon, the scriptwriter, you could see their talent shining through. And Dan O'Bannon thought to himself, we can make this even better. And so he started penning his own kind of monster movie, and he called it Star Beast. And Star Beast is what became Alien. Now, very interestingly enough, you can see the influence of John Carpenter on Alien. Obviously, not only because Dan O'Bannon worked with Carpenter, but the way he's written the script, it has Carpenter's same patented camera work and build-up of tension. You know, if you look at the original Halloween, you had incredible moments of where he would cut to just like a shot in a park, a shot down a deserted street, a shot creeping around a corner, and it just built up the tension of like, where is Michael going to come from? And Ridley Scott employs the similar device in Alien. So I'm going to talk about that a bit later, but Ridley Scott actually really liked Dark Star, and so when Dan O'Bannon approached him to do Alien, he jumped on board, and he just directed his first feature film himself, Duelists, which won an award at Cannes, so he was kind of hot property. So let's talk about Alien. It's the first 6 minutes, there's no dialogue. So again, re-emphasizing this build-up of atmosphere. There's an incredible atmosphere in this movie. The first 6 minutes, not a line of dialogue. You just see these patented shots of empty corridors, of sort of sci-fi equipment, the innards of the Nostromo. Now, Nostromo is a commercial spaceship that's heading back to Earth, and the crew are in limbo. And in the first 6 minutes, we see them sleeping. They wake up from their cryo sleep, and we get introduced to the various members of the crew. You've got Dallas, the captain, Sigourney Weaver's character, Ripley. Then you've got Brett, played by Harry Dean Stanton, Parker, played by Yapik Kotto, Lambert, played by Veronica Cartwright, and Ash, who's the company man who's there to oversee the whole operation. So they're heading back to Earth, and then suddenly they get a distress signal from a distant moon, and they are heading home and don't want to investigate. But Ash reminds them that according to the company contract, they have to investigate any kind of distress signal because it could be alien life, which the company would like to investigate and hopefully analyze. And so they begrudgingly touched down on this moon and disembarked off a very difficult landing. And they discover this hive colony of some sort of creature. They're not quite sure where. And there's a wonderful sequence where they discover this cavernous area with these myriad eggs. and one of the eggs suddenly hatches in front of Kane, John Hurt's character, which I haven't mentioned him. And he leans in to investigate, and of course this thing pops out of this pod and shatters through his visor, and they rush him back to the ship. The ship takes off hurriedly, and they cannot remove this parasite from his face. And they try all manner of means. Ash even tries to cut it with a laser, and immediately this corrosive liquid comes out, basically acid, and burns through like 3 levels of the ship. And they realize, no, we can't cut this thing. This is, it could destroy the hull of the ship. So they're trying to think of some way of removing it. And suddenly they find that the parasite has died. It's removed itself from Kane's visage, and he's now fine, seemingly fine. So they have a scene in the canteen where all hell breaks loose. And this is one of the most iconic scenes in cinema history, the infamous chest popping scene. And of course, they discover that Kane has been impregnated by this alien, and the alien is growing by the minute, by the hour. It is evolving from this lizard-like creature that first appeared to this gigantic monster. Now, Ridley Scott is very clever because, of course, this is pre-CGI. So there was a man playing the alien, a guy called, I think his name was Balaji Badego, who was a graphic artist who was 6'10". But obviously Ridley Scott couldn't shoot him in full length because they would have destroyed the whole illusion of the monster. So the alien, you see very little of the alien throughout the film. He's just suggested. There's glimpses of him. There's angles of maybe part of his visage, little snippets, and it's so brilliantly done because it also creates the tension. It's the same as Jaws, what Spielberg did with Jaws. You only see the shark 3/4 of the way through the movie. So it's really clever filmmaking, and I guess practical filmmaking, because he couldn't shoot the alien straight on, because then you would have seen the actor's eyes. So if you watch carefully throughout the film, he shoots it from different angles in full profile, at a sort of diagonal, but always never revealing the full length of the alien until the final scene of the movie. So very clever filmmaking from Ridley Scott. The lighting is incredible. It's this low-key, dark lighting. And the whole ship has got this kind of industrial, grungy, grim design. It's not one of these shining Star Trek, Star Wars ships. It feels like a gas tanker. It's really, and it also kind of roots you in reality. You feel like you kind of know these people. They're kind of blue collar workers. It's not this Battlestar Galactic fantasy. And the dialogue is very good. It's kind of overlapping dialogue, very naturalistic, minimalistic. So to sort of sum up, this is a brilliant reimagining of the old monster in the house scenario. And because of this low lit interiors, you'd never know where this thing's going to come from. So that also ramps up the tension, ramps up the suspense throughout the movie. And with these kind of John Carpenter type patented slow shots and establishing shots, mood shots, you just never know where this thing is hiding and where it's going to come from. Terry Rawlings, who edited it, is one of the best editors around. And he also cut Chariots of Fire, Blade Runner, so he knew Ridley Scott. And he does a magnificent job in this movie, together with Ridley Scott's pacing of the film. The editing is superb. And interesting enough, regarding the cinematography, 80% of the movie was actually shot by Ridley Scott himself, which is really unusual. And the reason for that was the set was so narrow, the corridors were so narrow that there wasn't space for tracking shots. There wasn't space for dolly shots. And so most of it had to be handheld. And Ridley Scott shot most of the handheld stuff, in fact, all of it himself. So 80% of the movie was shot by the director, which is very unusual. The music by Jerry Goldsmith is wonderful. It's eerie, kind of almost like a wind chime type music, and highly effective. One of Jerry Goldsmith's more low-key scores, but perfectly, like with Halloween and John Carpenter's score, it perfectly supplements the visuals and is a really eerie score. The production design by Michael Seymour, superb. He actually won a BAFTA for it. The cinematography I've mentioned before. In fact, the film is rated, I think it's 33 on the Empire's list of best films of all time, and 7th on the AFI's list of best science fiction films ever. So this is a real classic. It's there's been so many films that have tried to parody it, tried to rip it off, and the original remains the best by a country mile. It's even better than James Cameron's much vaunted sequel, Aliens. Aliens, with all its razzle dazzle and action and special effects, doesn't come near to the raw, classic, brilliant, original tension of this movie. The cast. Sigourney Weaver, it was her first movie. She was actually up, it was between her and Meryl Streep, interestingly enough, and Ridley Scott gave it to Sigourney Weaver because Meryl Streep was grieving John Cazale, who's just passed away, who was her partner, and he just felt that Sigourney Weaver was a fresh face as well. And you can't imagine anyone else in this role. She's absolutely brilliant. She exhibits this kind of tough exterior, but vulnerable as well, but quick thinking, on her feet. She's really Sigourney Weaver's Ripley is kind of the first female action star, if you come to think of it, and she does this without resorting to the ridiculous, ludicrous action that we see with female action characters now. She's no Lara Croft, she's no whatever Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, women beating up men, which is unrealistic. She thinks on her feet. She's mentally tough, like the final scene as well, where she outwits the alien is a classic example of this. She knows that she can't match the alien physically, but she matches it by outthinking it and plotting its demise, like in a split second. And there's so many great scenes in this movie. So the opening scene with the pod, when they investigate, the chest popping scene, I've mentioned that before. There's an incredible sequence where Harry Dean Stanton's character Brett is going up and down looking for his cat in these dark, dank, and you're all but compelled to run. Forget the cat, run, you idiot. And of course he doesn't. Dallas's demise, also a wonderfully plotted sequence of just pure adrenaline tension. And that's just clever directing, clever script writing, clever editing. And this film is all about that, building the tension to an unbearable climax. This is, it's technically a science fiction movie, but it has to be one of the greatest suspense horrors of all time. The performances are outstanding. I've mentioned Sigourney Weaver before. Ian Holm, who plays Ash, the company man, is brilliant. And there's if those of you who haven't seen the movie, he's hiding a secret which only gets revealed later. And there's Mother, of course, the onboard computer, that also has a secret of her own. So the company is not revealing all its cards regarding this unscheduled stop. Yapik Kotto is fantastic, who plays Parker, Veronica Cartwright, John Hurt for his brief 15 minutes in the film, or however long it is. He is superb. This is really a wonderful movie. I mean, look, Ridley Scott did pull a few strings to ramp up the tension. He's known for kind of not being great handling of actors. He actually used real offal and blood for the chest popping scene. So the reaction that the actors is real. He even used a German shepherd to frighten the cat, to get a reaction out of the cat. So, crossing the line, but hey, the piece of art it created, nobody can complain about that. This is an all-time classic. In space, no one can hear you scream.